Welcome, Rogers viewers. Thank you so much. If you're just joining in with us today, we're here at Mental Wellness Changing Steps talking to Irena Razanas. I said it right? And we're talking about grief and loss in young children, infants and young children. So, and in the first part of our show, we talked about preparing children for funeral ceremonies, celebration of life ceremonies, and talking about how impending death, culturally, how we're not so comfortable talking about death in our culture, generally speaking. And if I had a wish, it would be, I often say to my children, and they don't want to do this, back to my Irish ancestors, I would rather just be laid out at home. It's like, lay me out at home and let's just have people come. And my husband says, honey, you got to remember the funeral isn't for you. It's for the rest of us, should you die before I. So I have to be, I'm really mindful of that. And in the training that I've done over the past few years, in terms of being an ecumenical minister, we talk a lot about how do you create events and ceremonies that honor the person but also help the family grieve. So if a funeral has happened, or perhaps the person has died, in some families they may not mark the person's death with a funeral, but they delay the celebration of life ceremony, or they, which concerns me more when working with children around how to help them transition from recognizing that a loved one has died when there hasn't been any kind of ritual or routine or service around that. But in your work, and you have so much experience, because I know you also do work with volunteers at the hospice over the years, and you prep them and help them respond to their feelings of working with the dying. What concerns you when you hear about infants or children in terms of that their grief is more than what we would expect with grief, that their families are seeing symptoms that are of concern?
So very little children, like 2-year-olds, will express their grief in more primal ways. So it has to do with attachment, and you've talked on this show about attachment.
Right.
And so they are missing that person to whom they are attached.
Right.
And what we will see is natural things that will happen would be disruptions in their sleep patterns, the way they eat, more irritability.
Right.
So that's normal. So we have to expect something is going to happen. But if that child is able to transition to someone else in that, and then we put in a good routine. So I always talk about put a routine in place as soon as you can and keep that routine going to provide some kind of security and build trust, right?
Right.
We want to build trust as that child ages. So, you know, children as young as 3 can really pick up on what's going on, and they will be able to recognize that something has died, but they don't have a full understanding of death. So when adults say, oh, I don't know if they understand, well, they don't really totally understand.
No, it's just that person who was so important to them is gone.
It's gone, right? That's what's happened there. Typically, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds will ask, when is so-and-so coming back?
Right.
And of course, when we use language that they really don't quite understand yet, and say that a person has gone to a certain place, or explain
I remember they said, she's sleeping now. So then they were dealing with a child who was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be sleeping because I want to come back. I want to be here tomorrow for breakfast.
Yeah.
They didn't quite understand what that
so
meant.
we really want to use the word death and dying and all of that, and make that okay as we go along. So that's what that's the language that everyone's using. And then know that they really don't understand
what that means.
What it means until they get to be 7, 8, 9, depending on the maturity and their experience. So yeah, children that are exposed to death earlier will understand that that means the person is not coming back. But they don't understand all of the other parts. Meaning, you know, we were talking about funeral service, they won't understand any of that. Right. I mean, there are adults that I meet that don't understand what a cremation is, or how bodies are interned, or any of those things. So this is all learning. And what we're doing as parents is we're teaching our children what we do in these circumstances. So if it's the first time that a family is going through this, we as a family are learning what it's like to make a funeral and how we're going to do that. And these are the parts, and you can add in any parts that you want, but it is good to have rituals and so on. And then we're showing them, what do we do with all our feelings, right, as they come? And those feelings don't go away. They don't go away. It takes months and months and often years for that. So when those feelings come up as you go along, what do you do with those feelings? How do we handle them? And this is where, you know, I always tell younger children, you know, crying is okay. If we don't cry and we don't let that stuff out, then we're going to become old and grouchy and all mean, you know. Then on kids, if I say to them, do you know anybody like that that's really mean and no, oh yeah, I know somebody like that. Well, that's because something bad happened to them and they never got out their feelings. So in the work that we do, and you know, we often talk about play therapy, it's a great way to teach kids how to recognize when they have certain feelings and then what to do with that. How do we handle it? And there are so many good ways to deal with big feelings, and kids almost at any age can tell us what to do.
But even therapists struggle with that. I know I worked with a little girl for a while, and she had lost her primary attachment figure at 2 and was coming to see me at 3, and we played funeral. And we played funeral over and over and over again. And given my own experience with grief, with people close to me, I had to make sure I had good supervision in place.
Yes.
I didn't plan sessions after that session, so I gave myself some time to kind of get grounded. And I made sure I was prepared for her, because, you know, it wasn't, though I agree with you, it's important for the adults around children to be comfortable sharing their feelings. As a therapist, you're supposed to be holding all of that space, so sometimes it might be appropriate to say, I'm going to cry with you, this is really sad, and then other times we want to hold the space and let them practice the ritual.
Exactly. So you're doing both, and parents will ask, is it okay if I cry in front of my children? Yes, sure. It is absolutely okay. At some point, though, if it becomes uncontrollable, like a parent is saying, I just can't, that part they need to get help with, so that they can, you know, get their life together in a way, get the supports they need, so they can show their children that they can manage.
And we're going to be okay.
Yes, and kids need to get that messaging that the person who now is taking care of them can manage, right?
So what tools would you use, or have you found effective in the play therapy room in working with young children in helping them process their grief?
Well, we do a lot of feeling faces, and we do a lot of building, you know, use plasticine, or we can do faces that way. I share a lot of really good books with parents too that they can go home and read with their kids. So working together with parents and children to help them have that conversation, to know that this is all right. Sandre, I use that as well with kids, same idea. Storytelling about other characters and puppets. So my puppets have all had losses. And as long as I can
So you're normalizing and introducing the child to the puppet, saying this, you know, this is my alligator puppet, and he lost his mummy.
That's right.
Not too long ago.
Telling stories about what that felt like, and knowing typically at certain ages what kids feel. You know, as children go to that 7, 8, 9, they're really worried something will happen to the surviving parent.
Yeah.
They are terrified.
I've seen that lots, where you, even in it as young as 2, being very clingy and following that parent no matter where they go.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, when the puppet that I have says that they were worried about that, but then they started to learn that, no, things are okay, and that really helps children to process some of that and learn. So puppetry is a lot of fun to do with kids. Drawing things out too. We draw a lot of our feelings and play in that way. There's so many different things that are effective. You know.
And if one of our parents are watching and they know that someone in the family is going to die, can you think? Are there a few books that you like to use? I love Tear Soup.
Tear Soup is a great book, often for
older kids.
Older kids. When Dinosaurs Die is a
that's a great one too.
So it talks about it talks about all the different ways that people die and what it looks like. And you don't have to read the whole thing. You can read different parts.
Skip over it. Yeah, that sometimes parents don't realize you can skip over the pages that aren't applicable or maybe too much information for the stage where that child is at.
Yeah. I also like a book for a few months later. It's called Raising You Alone. And it's about this rabbit who's raising his little rabbits alone. And I don't really know if you can tell if it's a female or male rabbit. Sort of done really well.
So it's gender neutral.
Yeah, gender neutral, which I like. And you see the parents arguing back and forth, arguing with their kids, and even though we'll argue, I still love you, that kind of thing. And it talks about just all the different things that families go through to adjust, right? And that's why I'm saying.
So it's really the cycle of family, right?
Yes.
When you know that you get back to arguing over the, who left their dishes in their sink.
Exactly.
You're getting back to family functioning day to day.
Yeah,
stuff.
and it touches on relationship too a little bit, where it says, one day in the book, I'm going to need a friend. So it shows these two adult rabbits on the couch talking to each other, and it says that's okay. We all need to have friends, and it was just
so
really
if
good.
our viewers can't remember those titles, I know I've recommended to people just go to Amazon. And go to your public library and ask your librarian.
Yeah, Raising You Alone, that's a cute
Raising You Alone
one.
is a good one. But are there any other books about grief and loss that are available that you can borrow and keep to help kind of open space for that? I love that phrase that you use, provide space for that conversation to happen. And if, before we close today, if I feel like I want to access some more services for my child or my niece or my nephew or my grandchild, where could they look in? I know every region has services, so they could look at hospice and then phone to say, hey, do you have, and if anything, they could recommend bereavement groups.
Yeah, I think hospice is a good start.
Okay.
In the Greater Toronto area. I'm out
Or
in Waterloo.
Peel Region has some hospice too.
Yeah, you would find that even outside of Toronto, hospice is a good start.
Okay.
Anyway, I think that would be a beginning.
Perfect.
Some funeral homes also have groups that they run, and some of them also have online supports that are sort of part of the services that you're buying. And that's
funny
a good
you
start.
Say that. I just noticed that I was doing some research, and a local funeral home had some online resources that parents could print out for children, which is wonderful. Because we started the show by talking about we need to be talking more about death. Just like when we talk about birth, we need to be talking more about death and what that means in different cultures, and why it's important to honor the person that died and support the people that are surviving, because that's going to help not only families maintain health, but it's healthy communities. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and expertise. And if this topic has been upsetting to you, please look at your local hospice and you can give them a call. And if you're interested in learning more about how to work with folks that are dying or palliative care, you can look to your local community college. There's in Ontario, there's a really wonderful online course in death and dying that you can do at home. So thank you for your time. We look forward to having you back in the studio next time. Take care.